Have you ever stopped to think about what really happened inside a Roman fort? Waking up before the sun, relentless training, and a life of sacrifices. But what if I told you that there are shocking secrets behind this routine? These soldiers, like you, dealt with daily challenges, fears, and the weight of an impossible mission, protecting an empire. What you are about to discover now will change the way you see courage and overcoming. Are you ready to know the hidden truth about life in a Roman fort? Let's uncover this secret together. If you are not yet subscribed to the channel, take advantage now to be part of our community. Every interaction you make makes this space more special. Imagine yourself entering a Roman fort. The imposing stone walls are not only a physical barrier, but also a symbol of order and Roman military power. Within these walls lies a true military city, meticulously planned to house up to 10,000 soldiers. Every detail was thought out to maximize efficiency and maintain discipline. Upon entering the gates, you are immediately immersed in the rigor and organization that shaped the life of a Roman soldier. The barracks were the beating heart of this microcosm. The legionaries who formed the base of the army shared simple quarters known as contubernia, which could accommodate up to 8 men. These rooms were functional in style, equipped with only the essentials: wooden or stone beds and small chests to store personal belongings. Each group of soldiers shared tasks such as cleaning the space and preparing their meals, creating a bond of camaraderie that was vital to success in combat. For many, these barracks represented more than a place to rest. They were a collective home amid the uncertainties of military campaigns. Interestingly, the strategic location of each barrack reinforced the sense of hierarchy. Lower-ranking legionaries were located further away from the center of the fort, while higher-ranking officers, such as the commander, occupied the praetorium, a building that resembled a villa within the fort. Unlike the soldiers' barracks, the praetorium offered comfort and luxury, with large spaces, decorative mosaics, and even small indoor gardens. This contrast was no coincidence. It highlighted the leader's power and authority, creating an environment that reinforced order and discipline. The daily routine in these barracks was intense. At dawn, the soldiers would wake up to the sound of a trumpet and immediately organize their rooms. Every item had to be in its right place, as inspecting cleanliness and organization was a common practice. This attention to detail was not only a reflection of Roman discipline, but also a way to maintain health and high morale, especially in times of war. Soldiers learned early on that chaos had no place in a Roman fort. But what was it like to live under these conditions? Despite their simplicity, the barracks offered a strong sense of community. An interesting example is that during the evenings, legionaries would often share stories, sing traditional songs, or talk about their families. This habit created a kind of emotional refuge, a necessary contrast to deal with the physical and psychological challenges of training and battles. Another fascinating point is that Roman forts were designed to ensure functional life, even under siege. The position of the tents, the proximity of supplies, and even ventilation were strategically thought out. This demonstrates the level of engineering and military planning that the Romans achieved far ahead of their time. Now, take a moment to reflect. What would it be like to share a small space with 7 comrades in arms, knowing that each of them would need to rely on you in battle? It is an experience that not only required physical strength, but also unparalleled mental resilience. And you, how do you think you would deal with this reality? Tell us in the comments how you would feel living in a Roman fort. While the legionnaires' tents were designed for functionality, other areas of the fort revealed the grandeur of Roman engineering. Let's learn a little more about these structures that guaranteed the survival and efficiency of the soldiers. After all, what would an army be without its solid and well-prepared bases? Stay with us and find out. What do you think about this? Leave your opinion in the comments. It may inspire others. When you cross the walls of a Roman fort, What you see is not just a military center, but an impressively organized space full of structures that ensured the flawless functioning of the daily lives of thousands of soldiers. Each building, each corridor, and even the location of objects had a reason for being, forming a true human machinery driven by efficiency. These structures were not just buildings, they represented the foundation that supported one of the greatest powers of antiquity. Let's start with the Horea, the Roman granaries, which occupied a central place in military logistics. Imagine enormous warehouses built to withstand the elements, with ingenious ventilation systems that protected the grain from humidity and prevented it from rotting. These warehouses ensured that the army had supplies even during prolonged campaigns or sieges, when access to fresh food was limited. The Romans were so meticulous that they even created raised floor systems with small openings that kept the air circulating. This not only preserved food, but also kept pests such as rats, a silent enemy that could jeopardize the survival of the entire troop, at bay. These granaries were so well planned that in some regions, archaeologists still find traces of structures that show how the Roman Empire used architecture to win not only battles, but also everyday challenges. It is fascinating to think that, even in remote and inhospitable places, Roman efficiency prevailed. Another highlight were the factories, the workshops that served as centers of innovation. Here, weapons, armor, and tools were repaired or produced in record time. It was an environment of practical creativity, where blacksmiths, craftsmen, and engineers worked in harmony. Flexibility was one of the keys to success. If something broke during a campaign, the factory was ready to fix it or create a custom solution. Imagine a soldier who had just damaged his sword in combat. He could hand it in at the factory in the morning and have it back before the end of the day, fully functional. It was not just a question of convenience, but of survival. And in an army that was constantly marching, healthcare was essential. That's why forts also had a valetudinarium, the fort's hospital. This wasn't a hospital as we know it today, but it was ahead of its time in terms of organization. Divided into specific wards, the valetudinarium treated everything from battle wounds to common illnesses that could devastate an entire camp. Roman doctors, trained in techniques that mixed science and superstition, performed everything from simple surgeries to more complex treatments. They used instruments such as bronze scalpels and tweezers, many of which can still be seen in modern museums. Interestingly, medicinal herbs such as valerian and thyme were widely used to relieve pain and prevent infections. Now, think about it. While today we benefit from medical advances, Roman soldiers relied on practices that, for the time, were almost revolutionary. And this system was so efficient that even in adverse conditions, many wounded men could return to service quickly. But the grandiosity of the planning didn't stop there. Each fort had areas designated for water storage, often in underground cisterns, ensuring a supply even during periods of drought. This care with water resources was crucial for the survival of the troops. In addition, there were sewage systems designed to keep the fort clean and prevent disease, a rare sight in ancient times. These structures reveal how the Romans turned organization into their greatest weapon. They didn't just build forts, they created perfect machines that combined military strategy, cutting-edge engineering, and an impressive capacity for adaptation. And now, imagine yourself living in such a place. What would it be like to walk through the corridors of the valetudinarium, hear the incessant hammering coming from the factory, or smell the grain stored in the Horea? Sounds incredible, doesn't it? Even more impressive is how every detail of the fort connected to form a functional network that never failed. If you could visit a Roman fort today, where would you like to spend the most time? What part of this intricate system piques your curiosity the most? Leave your opinion in the comments and stay with me, because the next part of this journey will take you to a more relaxed side of life in the fort. You will be surprised to discover how the soldiers balanced strict discipline with moments of leisure, entertainment and socializing. If discipline and organization defined the rhythm of life in a Roman fort, it was commerce and leisure that gave color to the soldiers' routine. After all, even the most hardened men from training and war needed moments to recharge their batteries, socialize, and reconnect with a sense of humanity that often seemed distant amidst the rigors of military life. The heart of commerce in the forts were the areas known as Masella and Tabernae. Imagine small, vibrant markets where soldiers could buy and exchange essential items, as well as small luxuries that brought comfort on difficult days. The Tabernae, shops scattered around the fort, sold everything from fresh food, such as fruit and bread, to personal items, such as amulets and household utensils. For the legionaries, these small purchases often represented more than a simple transaction. They were a way of maintaining a connection with the world outside the walls. And it wasn't just the soldiers who were busy in these commercial areas. Many local merchants saw the fort as a business opportunity and traveled to these military bases to sell their products. This created a fascinating cultural exchange. Imagine a legionary who had never left his home region, trying exotic spices or acquiring jewelry from distant regions of the Roman Empire. These interactions showed that, even in a military environment, diversity was a force to be reckoned with. Another essential element of Roman leisure were the public baths, the famous balnea. However, for security reasons, these baths were always built outside the perimeter of the fort, since the risk of fire posed a constant threat. Even so, soldiers made a point of frequenting them, as they were not only a place for personal hygiene, but also a space for socializing. There, between the hot steam and the cold baths, they discussed the day's events, shared stories, and even formed lasting friendships. But what about entertainment? For an army that saw training and battle as routine, the forms of leisure were surprisingly varied. Roman soldiers enjoyed theatrical performances organized by itinerant artists who brought comedies and tragedies to entertain the audience. In addition, mimes, a popular form of theater, drew laughter with their satire on everyday life, something that the soldiers could certainly relate to their own experiences. And we cannot forget the gladiatorial spectacles, veritable spectacles that fascinated not only the Romans, but also the local populations. While not as grand as the games held in arenas like the Colosseum, these smaller events still captured the essence of competition and courage, qualities that soldiers deeply admired. Between fights, soldiers would bet, cheer, and connect with the gladiators' stories of triumph and sacrifice. Interestingly, leisure activities at forts were not limited to traditional entertainment. Military games were a common practice, both for fun and to hone skills. Imagine a makeshift field where soldiers would simulate combat, race, or compete in javelin throws. More than just fun, these activities reinforced team spirit and kept the army in constant readiness. Behind all these forms of leisure, there was a carefully considered balance. Commanders knew that exhausted, mentally worn, or unmotivated soldiers would not be effective in combat. So moments of relaxation were encouraged, and these spaces for socializing became essential to maintaining high morale. Now imagine yourself in one of those moments, strolling through the tavernae, sipping a local wine, or watching a mime show while laughter echoes around you. You can feel how these moments made the day seem lighter, even in such a disciplined environment. And speaking of balance, the soldiers not only relaxed, but also found ways to reconnect with their faith, traditions, and values. This sense of belonging, which went beyond the physical and reached the spiritual, was also part of their life in the fort. Let's walk together to the administrative and spiritual center of this impeccable organization and see what it reveals to us about the spirit of the Roman army. At the heart of every Roman fort stood the Principia, a structure that transcended the functional and assumed a symbolic and central role in military life. This was more than just a building. It was the place where administrative decisions, spiritual strength, and the cohesion of the army came together. Every detail of this space reflected the order and determination that defined the Roman Empire. And stepping inside was, for soldiers, a constant reminder of the greatness of which they were a part. The Principia began with its imposing entrance, often decorated with sculptures, coats of arms, or inscriptions that extolled the glory of Rome and the power of the army. This was where the administrative organization of the fort took place, and its grandeur reflected the importance of the place to military functioning. The administrative center was centered around the basilica, a large room used for meetings, assemblies, and trials. Imagine soldiers gathered there, listening to speeches from their commanders or participating in ceremonies that strengthened the bonds of loyalty and duty. However, what truly captured the spiritual essence of the Principia was the Hades, a small sanctuary located at the very heart of the building. The Hades was not just a religious space, it was where the legion's sacred standards were kept, including the famous Aquila, the eagle-shaped standard that symbolized the honor and spirit of the army. These standards were treated almost as sacred relics, and losing one in battle was considered an unbearable dishonor. Imagine the reverence of the soldiers as they passed this place. Before each campaign, it was common to perform rituals at the Hades, asking for divine protection and success on the battlefield. It was a solemn moment, where men, even hardened by battle, found a spiritual connection that strengthened their resolve. But the Hades also held another secret. Beneath it, in carefully guarded underground chambers, was the fort's treasury. This was the place where not only the army's funds were stored, but also captured tributes, jewels, and other valuable goods. Although rarely mentioned, this chamber symbolized the economic power that sustained the Roman military machine. The Principia also housed the armamentarium, the fort's arsenal. Spare weapons and armor were stored here, ready to replace damaged equipment or provide extra supplies in case of unexpected attacks. It was a veritable fortress within a fortress, designed to ensure that soldiers were always ready for any eventuality. Every corner of the Principia exuded order and symbolism. The floor itself, often decorated with mosaics or carefully polished stones, demonstrated the attention to detail and grandeur. On the walls, tablets could be found with detailed records of troops, supplies, and plans, proof that administrative efficiency was as crucial as skill on the battlefield. And yet, the Principia was not just a place of work and ceremony. It was where soldiers found a sense of belonging, a point of convergence that gave meaning to their role in the vast Roman Empire. Even far from home, under the weight of military discipline, they knew they were part of something greater, something almost divine. Now close your eyes and imagine yourself walking through this space. Can you hear the echoes of footsteps on the marble, the respectful whispers of soldiers as they pass the Hades, or the clang of weapons in the armamentarium? It's almost as if we can feel the weight of time and history in these corridors. And what makes this even more fascinating is realizing that while the Principia represented order and spirituality, there was a completely different side to life at the fort that offered soldiers the opportunity to challenge themselves and grow daily. Get ready, because we are about to witness the intense and disciplined routine that shaped the bodies and minds of these relentless warriors. The life of a Roman soldier at the fort was an eternal cycle of discipline, learning, and overcoming. From the moment the first ray of sunlight appeared on the horizon, the daily routine began with a vibrant energy, where each action had a clear purpose: to keep the army always ready, physically and mentally, for any challenge that might arise. At dawn, the legionaries were awakened by a sound signal that echoed throughout the barracks. There was no time for laziness or procrastination. The first task was to tidy the rooms, a direct reflection of the discipline required by Rome. Every bed, Every utensil, every object had a defined place and had to be impeccably organized. For the commanders, each soldier's personal order reflected his or her preparation for war. After this quick organization, the soldiers would proceed to their morning meal, simple but functional: bread, cheese, and occasionally fruit or porridge. This basic diet was designed to provide enough energy without overloading the body, allowing everyone to be ready for the activities that followed. Next came the moments that defined the essence of being a legionnaire: military training. Imagine a vast open field filled with soldiers organized in perfect formations, each movement marked by precision. The activities were varied, ranging from long marches that could last hours to intense physical exercises that included running, climbing, and lifting weights. All of this was designed to ensure that the soldiers developed strength, endurance, and agility, qualities indispensable on the battlefield. The combat practices were a spectacle in themselves. Using wooden swords heavier than real ones, the soldiers practiced their strikes and defenses until each movement became instinctive. This technique had a strategic purpose. By using heavier weapons in training, the real ones, made of metal, seemed incredibly light and easy to handle in combat. In addition, there were shield exercises where the legionnaires learned to form the famous testudo, or turtle formation, a defensive technique that protected the entire group under a mantle of interlocking shields. Among the trainings, practical tasks arose that ensured the functioning of the fort. Each soldier had his own responsibility, whether in maintaining the structures, supervising supplies, or constant surveillance. The rotation of these tasks also ensured that everyone was prepared to perform in different roles, strengthening the legion's adaptability. At the end of the morning, after so many activities, it was time for a break. The soldiers had a brief period for rest or personal activities. Some took the opportunity to write letters to their families, keeping their connections with their loved ones alive, while others chose to sharpen their weapons, ensuring that they were always in perfect condition. For those who received deliveries from home, opening a package brought a little comfort in the midst of a hard life. In the afternoon, the pace changed. Ambulatio, the famous military excursions, were common. These battle simulations were carried out in varied terrain, challenging soldiers to adapt to any type of environment, from dense forests to rocky hills. These incursions were not just exercises, they were true tests of strategy and teamwork. Soldiers had to create ambushes, protect their comrades, and face scenarios that mirrored real-life war conditions. As night fell, the routine continued. Before dinner, soldiers participated in assemblies where they received instructions for the following day. The evening meal was more substantial and often accompanied by a little wine, a way to relax and replenish energy. Despite the more relaxed atmosphere, the focus on discipline remained unwavering. And what were their downtime like? On the rare nights when they weren't on duty, legionaries would enjoy board games, play dice, or tell stories around small campfires. It was during these moments that the sense of camaraderie was strengthened, creating bonds that would be essential in times of crisis. But what made this routine truly fascinating was the perfect balance between toughness and humanity. The Roman soldier was not just a war machine. He was a human being forged by discipline, but driven by the hope of returning home, by loyalty to his comrades, and by the passion to defend what he believed in. What about you? Can you imagine what it would be like to live a day as one of these soldiers? Think about how every detail, from the first step at dawn to the moments of relaxation at night, built the spirit of a legion that would echo throughout history. This journey doesn't end here. You are part of this legacy. By bringing curiosity, by connecting with history, and by reliving the narratives of an empire that shaped the world. Let's continue transforming this curiosity into knowledge, and remembering that each story has its importance. Just like you, who have followed us this far. And so we have reached the end of this incredible journey through the life of a Roman soldier in a fort. Can you imagine? A routine full of discipline, exhausting training, moments of camaraderie, and a greater purpose that moved them all to protect Rome and its ideals. Now think for a moment about everything we saw. Roman forts were not just places of defense. They were true cities pulsating with organization, strategy, and life. Every corner, every detail, from the simple lodgings to the treasures hidden in the Principia, tells a fascinating story about how the Romans managed to be so unbeatable. But do you want to know the real secret of this whole story? It wasn't just strength or weapons that made the difference. What really sustained everything was the spirit of the soldiers, the unity, the teamwork, and, above all, the ability to transform even the most difficult challenges into learning and strength. They lived with purpose. They believed in something greater. And that, my friends, is something we can still learn from them today. And do you know what's most interesting? Life in the Roman fort also had its human side. They were real men with dreams, fears, and hopes. Some wrote letters to their families, others laughed around the campfires, and all, in some way, left their mark on history. Each soldier had his role, and even though many are unknown, they were the ones who built the foundations of one of the greatest empires in humanity. Now, I need your help. The legacy of these soldiers lives on today in the curiosity of people like you, who seek to understand the past in order to value the present. So, here's the challenge. If you got this far, connected with this story, and think it deserves to be remembered, share it with more people. Comment here what surprised you the most, or what you liked most about this journey through life in the Roman fort. Was it the rigor of the training, the Roman baths, or the way they faced the routine with such courage? And pay attention, because there is much more about Rome that may still surprise you. Each detail we learn leads us to new questions, new secrets that history still holds. So, stay with us, because each little piece of this story brings us closer to the heroes who were once part of it. And look, if the Roman soldiers did not give up in the face of the greatest challenges, you can also take this lesson into life. Remember, knowledge is what connects us to the past, and you are part of that. Thank you for embarking on this journey with me. See you soon, because the history of Rome still has much to teach us.